The elevator inside my family's corporate headquarters climbed slowly, as if it sensed what was waiting for me at the top. My reflection in the mirrored panel showed a 25-year-old woman, freshly graduated in business administration, eyes filled with hope and a heart bursting with ambition. It was my first day working at Lourenco & Sons Inc., the company my grandfather had founded and my father, Cesar Lourenço, had turned into an empire. But that morning, the tension in my stomach wasn't just nerves. It was fear, cold, creeping, fear that had been growing since the day I announced, in front of the entire family, that I wanted to work for the company not as daddy's little girl but as a real project manager. I wanted to earn my place. I had no idea that desire would be used against me. As the elevator doors opened, I was greeted by indifferent stares. Secretaries, managers, directors. They all saw me as a bored little princess playing business. I was led to my father's office, where he waited with that same cold stare he reserved for employees on the verge of getting fired. "You don't need to be here, Bianca," he said, not even looking up from his monitor. "This is a battlefield, not a place for spoiled women." I swallowed hard. "Dad, I studied for this. I want to learn. I'm not asking for favors, just a chance." He finally looked at me and smiled, but it was the kind of smile that cuts crooked, bitter, filled with disdain. "Fine, you'll start in the archives department, from the bottom. Like everyone else, it could have been fair if it wasn't soaked in punishment." I spent 3 months surrounded by dusty boxes, old spreadsheets, and faded reports from meetings in 2006. I ate lunch alone. Colleagues whispered behind my back. The humiliation was quiet, but relentless. And worst of all, my father encouraged it. Then one day, something clicked. I began spotting patterns in the company's old projects: wasted money, inefficient logistics, missed opportunities. So I created an optimization proposal on my own. I built the entire model from scratch and presented it during a meeting with the directors, believing naively that my father would be proud. But what happened next, I will never forget. He stood up in the middle of my presentation, slammed his hand on the table, and shouted, "Who do you think you are, Bianca? This isn't college. This is the real world. Your idea is garbage." Silence. All eyes were on me. My cheeks burned. My throat twisted with a knot, begging to explode into tears. But I stood there, frozen, holding the proposal in my trembling hands, like a child being ridiculed in front of the entire class. Then he added, "You'll never be a real Lourenco. You'll never be capable of leading anything." In that moment, something inside me broke. But something else was born too. A fire I had never felt before. The kind of anger that doesn't burn recklessly at plans. It calculates, it whispers, "Prove him wrong." That night I left the company without telling anyone, took a bus, rode downtown, sat on an old bench in the city square and cried, harder than I'd ever cried in my life. But when the tears dried, I pulled out my notebook, and I wrote at the top of a blank page, "Escape plan, revenge plan, victory plan." I didn't know how, but I was going to win. I was going to become greater than all of them. The day after I left the company, I cut all ties. I deleted the corporate email from my phone, packed a small suitcase, and moved into a tiny studio apartment, above a bakery in a part of town where the streetlights barely worked, the kind of place my family would have called a pit. I called it freedom. I had $3,200 in savings. No connections, no office, no last name that opened doors. Just one thing. My idea, the same one my father had mocked in front of the entire boardroom. And deep inside me, I knew it wasn't garbage. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding that optimization model, line by line, until I could pitch it to someone who actually wanted to save money, not crush their daughter's spirit. I stayed up until 3 a.m. every night watching YouTube tutorials on data visualization, business automation, logistics chains. I taught myself things I was never allowed to try at Lourenco & Sons. I learned how to design pitch decks, how to cold email CEOs, how to knock on digital doors that slammed in my face again and again. Until one didn't. Her name was Valeria Santos, a logistics director at a mid-sized import-export company. I'd sent her a bold email titled, "I can cut your costs by 25% in 3 months, no salary, just a commission." She called me the next day. Our first meeting was at a cafe. I wore my best blazer, the one I bought with my first scholarship money. I showed her the model I had built, refined, sharp, efficient. She leaned back in her chair and smiled. "You're either insane or a genius," she said. Either way, I like it. And just like that, I had my first client. I poured everything into that project. I mapped every process in her warehouse, implemented new routing strategies, automated inventory tracking with tools no one at my father's company had even heard of. 3 months later, I'd saved her company over $280,000. She wired me a $50,000 commission. I almost fainted when I saw it in my account. But I didn't go shopping. I didn't take a trip to Paris. I didn't buy a new iPhone. I reinvested every cent. I registered my business under a new name, BL Innovations. No one needed to know that BL stood for Bianca Lorenco. I hired 2 freelancers, 1 coder, 1 analyst. I created a landing page. I ran ads. And I never stopped cold emailing. In less than a year, I had 7 clients, each one bringing in more revenue than the last. My work began circulating in startup communities. I was invited to speak on panels, on podcasts, in webinars. I was no longer just the girl my father humiliated in a boardroom. I was becoming a name, a brand, a force. Then, one night, I received a LinkedIn message that made my blood run cold. Hi Bianca, I've been hearing great things about BL Innovations. Would love to reconnect sometime. Marcos, diretor Ati Lourenço e Sons Marcos, one of my father's lapdogs, a man who once laughed while my father tore me down in that meeting. Now, he was reaching out, curious, suddenly friendly, and it got worse. The next day, I got an email from their procurement division. They wanted to explore a possible collaboration with BL Innovations. I laughed so hard, I nearly spilled coffee on my keyboard. They didn't know. They had no idea that the woman behind BL Innovations was the same girl they had tried to erase. I had a choice to make: ignore them, or play the game. So I replied with a polite smile, with a proposal, with a trap, because I was done being underestimated, and I was just getting started. I didn't sleep the night before the meeting at my parents' house. Not out of fear, those days were long gone, but out of something more dangerous, anticipation, because I knew what was coming, and I wanted to enjoy every second of it. The next morning, I arrived at the Lorenco estate, wearing white. It wasn't just fashion, it was war paint. The house loomed over the garden like a monument to arrogance, but today, it would be the backdrop to my coronation. The maid opened the door. He's in the study, Miss Bianca. Miss Bianca, not the little girl, not the intern. It had begun. I walked through the hallway of family portraits, my father standing tall beside my grandfather, his arms crossed, eyes proud. A lineage of men ruling from their leather thrones. And now, a woman had built her own throne. When I entered the study, he was sitting behind his desk, fingers laced, staring out the window. He didn't look up right away. When he finally did, his eyes scanned me, searching, maybe, for a trace of the daughter he used to belittle. But she wasn't there anymore. She was dead, and I had killed her. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice tight. "You called me," I replied. He nodded slowly. "You've done well. Your company is impressive. Your numbers, they speak for themselves. They scream." "Actually," I said. "But thank you." He sighed. "I was hard on you." I tilted my head. "You humiliated me in front of your board. You told me I'd never be a real Lorenco." He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize, either. Instead, he stood and walked to the liquor cabinet. Poured himself a glass of whiskey. It was 10 in the morning. "You remind me of your grandfather," he said. "He built this empire with nothing. I used to think I was like him. But you're more dangerous. You didn't just build something. You escaped us." That hit harder than I expected. He turned to face me. "I want you back in the company. As a partner. Equal stake." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You want me to return to the company that treated me like dirt? That dismissed me? That laughed at me?" "That was a mistake," he said. I stepped closer. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Over and over again. You watched me suffer in silence. You made sure I felt worthless. And now, because you need me, suddenly I'm worthy." He didn't say a word, so I delivered the final blow. "I don't want to be in your company. I want to buy it." His glass froze midair. "Excuse me, I've already spoken to 2 of your shareholders. They're ready to sell. Your profits are down. Your pipeline is broken. The only reason you're still standing is because your name has history. And I'm going to take that history and rewrite it." He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had, because I was no longer the daughter he could dismiss. I was the woman who had surpassed him. He sank into his chair. For the first time looking small, defeated. "You're serious," he said. "Dead serious. You'll ruin everything I built." "No, father, I'll evolve it." Then, I turned to leave. But just as I reached the door, I heard a crack in his voice. "Bianca, wait." I turned around. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking down, his hands trembling slightly. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I was wrong about you." I waited, and then he stood, walked around the desk, and for the first time in his life, he got on his knees. "Forgive me," he said. "Please." I said nothing, because he had taken my voice once. Now, silence was my revenge. I turned and left. The empire was mine, but I wasn't finished yet. Not until everyone who tried to bury me saw what I grew into. The days after my father knelt before me were quiet. Not in the world kept spinning, shouting, producing. But inside me, there was silence. A storm had passed, and now all that remained was focus. I had one. But I wasn't done. His apology didn't erase years of humiliation. It didn't return the tears I cried in bathroom stalls. It didn't undo the looks of pity, the sarcastic laughter in meetings, or the day he told me I'd never be a true Lorenco. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted to become unforgettable. And so, I proposed something that would shake the family tree to its roots. A full merger between Lorenco and Sons and BL Innovations. But on one condition, my name goes on top. Or there's no deal. Behind the boardroom doors he sat across from me in the same office where he once dismissed me. Only this time, he didn't dare raise his voice. "You want to erase the family name?" he asked, almost whispering. "No," I replied. "I want to evolve it. I want to build something the world can't ignore." And deep down, he knew I was right. The company was bleeding. Investors were leaving. Their outdated logistics model was crashing under the weight of modern competition. They had been kings of an old world. But the new world, it belonged to me. He resisted, but not for long. Pride doesn't pay salaries. And so he signed the papers. The fusion began. And with it, so did the storm. The day I walked back, Eni returned to the Lorenco headquarters as CEO, not as the intern, not as the daughter, as the architect of the company's future. And the walls felt it. Some employees couldn't meet my gaze. Others stared with disbelief, as if a ghost from the past had come back wearing armor and heels. I didn't come back to be liked. I came back to rebuild. In the first 30 days, I fired the executive team, starting with Marcos, the man who once laughed in my face during a pitch. Then I began transforming the company from the inside out. Legacy systems were replaced by AI-powered logistics tools from BL warehouses were digitized. Every department went through performance and culture audits. I didn't just want profits. I wanted a revolution, and I got it. Results speak louder than blood. The fusion shocked the industry. While some insiders mocked it, investors lined up. We secured an exclusive contract with one of Europe's biggest distribution chains. In 6 months, revenue doubled. Costs were slashed by 38%. Customer satisfaction skyrocketed. And headlines, they came flooding in. The daughter they rejected is now their boss. Bianca Lourenço turns family downfall into a global powerhouse. Once humiliated, now billionaire CEO. I gave interviews, but I wasn't petty. I didn't name names. I let the truth shine on its own. They didn't believe in me, so I became someone they couldn't ignore. Bianca Lourenço. Then came the magazine. Cover on email from the biggest business magazine in Latin America. "We want you on the cover of our most powerful women issue. Your story deserves the world's attention." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I smiled, because that cover wouldn't just be for me. It would be for every girl who was told to know her place. Every woman told she was too emotional, too ambitious, too much. I said yes. The photo shoot was surreal. A woman who had once filed paperwork in secret now posing with poise, power, and purpose, and when the issue dropped, she was spat on by her father. Now she owns the family empire. One final conversation before the issue hit newsstands. I called my father. Not out of spite, out of closure. He invited me to his house, the same one I once tiptoed through, afraid to speak up. This time, I walked in tall. He looked older, tired, not the tyrant I remembered, but a man finally realizing what he'd lost. I sat across from him. "The magazine comes out next week," I said. He nodded slowly. "You deserve it," he whispered. I didn't say thank you. I didn't comfort him. But I didn't mock him either. Instead, I said, "You tried to break me, but in doing so, you built something unstoppable." And for the first time in decades, he cried. But I didn't, because I had already cried enough. But my story isn't over yet. This wasn't the end. Success wasn't my final act. Now came something even bigger. What would I do with all this power? All this wealth, all this freedom? The legacy I was building didn't stop at numbers or headlines. It would change industries, it would raise up women. It would outlive me. That is the final chapter. Success. For so long, it felt like a distant shore I could only dream of while drowning in rejection. But now, I was standing on that shore. Crowned, victorious, with more wealth, power, and influence than anyone in my family could have imagined. But something strange happened the moment I realized I had everything. I didn't want to rest. I wanted to expand. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted a legacy. The empire was just the beginning, with the merger thriving and my face gracing business magazines. I received offers to sell the company for staggering amounts, numbers so high they made the old Lourenco fortune look like pocket change. But I said no. Why? Because money was never the goal. Impact was. So I took a bold step. I restructured the entire company under a new name, Nu Mordi Lorenzo, Isons. No more family legacy. Now, we were the Bianca Group, a global powerhouse led by innovation, inclusion, and fearless leadership. I expanded into 3 industries: tech and AI, logistics, female entrepreneur, acceleration, sustainable urban development. My first major act, I launched the BEL Fund, Bianca Empowers Leadership, a $300 million initiative focused solely on funding women who had been rejected by their families, shut out of corporate rooms, or silenced by systems that feared their voices. I sat at the table, then built my own. Began hosting the Phoenix Summit, an annual gathering of self-made women who had risen from ashes like mine. No politics, no hand-me, just women with fire in their eyes and battle scars on their souls. In the first year, we hosted 1,200 attendees. In the second, over 10,000. Some of the world's most influential female CEOs, scientists, filmmakers, and inventors now call me sister. And it all started because one man, my father, told me I didn't belong. Turns out, I didn't belong in his world. I was meant to build a new one. The family reunion that wasn't a year after my rise. My aunt invited me to a family reunion. It was at the same country estate where my father once yelled at me in front of everyone, humiliating me during a company dinner. I wasn't planning to go. But then, I remembered that girl. The one who cried in the car that night, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her fingers turned white dots. So I went. When I arrived, silence fell like snow. Everyone was older now, grayer, smaller. My cousins, who used to whisper behind my back, avoided eye contact. My uncles, the same men who laughed when my dad kicked me out of the company, tried to greet me with fake smiles. And then he walked in, my father. He approached me, slower now, his eyes unsure. Bianca. I held up a hand. Calm. Not cruel, controlled. Dad, I didn't come here to forgive you. I forgave myself the day I stopped needing your approval. He nodded. He knew. I leaned closer, not with venom, but with finality. I came here to show the little girl in me that she made it. Then I left. Just like that, and as I stepped into my waiting car, I felt it closure, and then I did the unthinkable with everything I had built. The natural next step would be to secure it, to protect it, to live off it. But I didn't want to become like the people who hurt me, hoarding power, controlling it, defining worth by money alone. So I made a bold, controversial move. I stepped down as CEO. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to pass the torch. I appointed a young Afro-Brazilian woman named Leticia, a visionary leader I had mentored since the early days of the BEL Fund. She was fearless, bold, ready. I watched as headlines exploded. Bianca Lourenco steps aside to empower next generation. From humiliated intern to queenmaker. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just taken the crown. I had redesigned the entire kingdom, and now, I travel the world. I teach, I write. I speak in places where girls are still silenced, where poverty still dictates worth, where family is used as a weapon. I remind them, blood is not destiny, and I'm not alone anymore. There are thousands of Biancas rising now, because I didn't just win. I made it impossible for others like me to lose. Final words: this story isn't just about business, it's about reclaiming worth. It's about refusing to be buried. It's about becoming so powerful, so complete, that even those who tried to erase you have to read your name in lights. So yes, my father spat in my face for being poor. He humiliated me in front of boardrooms, stripped me of dignity, left me for dust, but now, I'm richer than all of them combined. Not just in money, in purpose, in peace, in legacy. And that, they'll never take from me.